October 25th, 2015, 30th Sunday in Ordinary Time.
A reading from the book of the prophet Jeremiah. Thus says the Lord, shout with joy for Jacob, exult at the head of the nations. Proclaim your praise and say, the Lord has delivered his people, the remnant of Israel. Behold, I will bring them back from the land of the north. I will gather them from the ends of the world, with the blind and the lame in their midst, the mothers and those with child. They shall return as an immense throng. They departed in tears, but I will console them and guide them. I will lead them to brooks of water on a level road, so that none shall stumble. For I am a father to Israel. Ephraim is my firstborn. The word of the Lord.
The Lord has done great things for us. We are filled with joy. The Lord has done great things for us. We are filled with joy. When the Lord brought back the captives of Zion, we were like men dreaming. Then our mouth was filled with laughter, and our tongue with rejoicing. The Lord has done great things for us. We are filled with joy.
Then they said among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them. The Lord has done great things for us. We are glad indeed.
The Lord has done great things for us. We are filled with joy. Restore our fortunes, O Lord, like the torrents in the southern desert. Those that sow in tears shall reap rejoicing. The Lord has done great things for us. We are filled with joy. Although they go forth weeping, carrying the seed to be sown, they shall come back rejoicing, carrying their sheaves. The Lord has done great things for us. We are filled with joy. The Lord has done great things for us. We are filled with joy.
A reading from the letter to the Hebrews. Brothers and sisters, every high priest is taken from among men and made their representative before God to offer gifts and sacrifices for sins. He is able to deal patiently with the ignorant and erring, for he himself is beset by weakness, and so for this reason must make sin offerings for himself as well as for the people. No one takes this honor upon himself, but only when called by God, just as Aaron was. In the same way, it was not Christ who glorified himself in becoming high priest, but rather the one who said to him, "You are my son. This day I have begotten you." Just as he says in another place, "You are a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek." The word of the Lord.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. As Jesus was leaving Jericho with his disciples and a sizable crowd, Bartimaeus, a blind man, the son of Timaeus, sat by the roadside begging. On hearing that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, "Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me." And many rebuked him, telling him to be silent. But he kept calling out all the more, "Son of David, have pity on me." Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." So they called the blind man, saying to him, "Take courage, get up. Jesus is calling you." He threw aside his cloak, sprang up, and came to Jesus. And Jesus said to him in reply, "What do you want me to do for you?" The blind man replied to him, "Master, I want to see." Jesus told him, "Go your way, your faith has saved you." Immediately he received his sight and followed him on the way. The Gospel of the Lord.
The first reading comes from Jeremiah 31, 7-9. It's a hymn of exaltation because God is going to bring back the remnant of Israel. Now the remnant means those few who were faithful. When God allowed Israel to be punished, He always preserved a few chosen ones so that they could rebuild the nation. He didn't want to destroy what He had started. He wanted to purify it. Remember how Noah and his family were preserved from the flood? That was true all throughout the invasions that Israel suffered. But now they'll be brought back. It'll be a second Exodus. And in fact, they'll come back from the lands of the north. Now, what the prophet is saying is not just they're coming from the north. You have to realize that because of the way that deserts lie around Israel, the only path that's safe for people to come back is from the north. It's a roundabout way, but they had to pass through the various valleys that come from the north. Where are they coming from? From the diaspora. By this time, the time of the prophet Jeremiah, Jews have been scattered all throughout the known world, and now they'll be brought back to their homeland. And not only the healthy, the strong, the young, but even the blind, the lame, women with child, women in labor, because God is going to care for them. The punishment is forgotten, the offense is forgiven. God will take care of His people. The second reading comes from Hebrews 5, 1-6. This reading plays again with that image that Jesus is the high priest. He's a high priest not like the Levites. They were high priests because of descendants. They were descended from the patriarch Levi. Jesus is not a Levite. He's from the tribe of Judah. Nevertheless, he's a high priest like Melchizedek. Melchizedek was a king of Jerusalem, and he was a priest in the days of Abraham. Likewise, Jesus will be a priest like Melchizedek. And even the name Melchizedek allows for a wordplay because Melchizedek means the king of righteousness, who is Jesus. He was king of Jerusalem, and Jesus is crowned king of Jerusalem when he's crowned with a crown of thorns. He's a king of peace. That is one of the titles used to identify Jesus. And Jesus is a better high priest than the previous ones. Remember, there's Hebrew and Greek symbolism here, and one of the Hebrew symbols is that if something is true about a king, it's much more true about God. Well, the priests of the past were okay, but they had to sacrifice for themselves because they were sinners. Jesus is a much greater high priest because he is not a sinner. Therefore, his entire offering is for us. That doesn't mean, though, that he doesn't recognize who we are and our weakness, because he identifies with it. He himself has taken on this weakness. And therefore, while he's able to fully identify with us, he doesn't identify with our sinfulness. Therefore, he's able to lift us out of a pit that we've dug for ourselves by living a life of selfishness. The Gospel is from Mark 10, 46-52. Jesus has left Jericho, and a man named Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus, who's a blind beggar, calls out, "Son of David, Jesus, have pity on me." It's interesting that the title Son of David is used. Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem, so this blind man is one of the first to identify Jesus as the King of Israel. That's what the title Son of David would mean. The disciples try to quiet him down because he's causing a bit of chaos. And Jesus lets the man come to him and says, "What do you want?" He says, "That I can see." And Jesus says, "Your faith has saved you." Remember in the Gospels, when somebody is healed of a malady, Without an expression of faith, the gospel will simply say the person was healed. When someone expresses faith, the person is saved. Because the healing is not simply physical, it's also spiritual. This blind man has been healed to the depths of his heart. Therefore, he's one with God. Notice how he insisted on this miracle. Jesus in the Gospels teaches about prayer, and he very often insists that we not simply pray in a half-hearted way, but we call upon the heavens and we almost demand that God give us what we need. Notice not what we want, but what we need. And this is a Jewish way of understanding. Jewish people use what's called chutzpah. It could be interpreted as nerviness, as pushiness. They're not afraid to tell God what they truly need and sort of push at it. One of the Psalms in effect says, Lord, I'm really sick. You better heal me quick because if I die, it's going to look bad for you. Sometimes as Catholics, we're a little bit too timid in our prayers. Whatever you want, God, I'm afraid to ask it because you know what I need. Jesus wants us to ask. Jesus wants us to insist. Not that we can force God's hand, but rather believing that God is a good parent. Like any child, we will call upon God to give us what we need. And may God bless us.